So now I'd love to introduce our next conversation, helping AAPI youth develop solid identities and build cross-cultural bridges. Randy is a senior executive in the learning and development sector. Applying learning theories, technology, and motivation, he has successfully supported adults as well as adolescents. He has also helped people of all backgrounds overcome their biases so they would be more open to learn and experience new knowledge as well as culture. As a husband and father, he intends to use his skills and experiences to help shape a better future for the next generation. Welcome, Randy. Now, moderating this conversation, we have Hunter, who is a virtual event host here at Power to Fly. Hunter is also an artist who has a passion for bringing people together to foster growth, kindness, and a true understanding of each other. Welcome, Hunter, and please take it away.
Hi, Mariella. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you. Thank you for that intro. And Randy, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. We have a bunch of great questions for you that I'm excited to do. And I also believe you have a little presentation for us you can show to sort of give us a context here and let us know who you are, what you're doing, and what's going on. So you're going to share your screen with us. Is that right?
Yes, Hunter. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. So I'll let you kick us off here, and in about 10 minutes, I'll come and chime in a little bit, and we can jump back in. Take it away, Randy.
Fantastic. Thank you. And hi, everyone. And it is my hope to make a difference. I'm a dad of 4 myself, and my kids are in school. So this topic is of great personal importance to me. The way I intend to do this talk is by spending the first 50% of my time giving you guys framing the context, because too many people believe that Asian American kids or API kids in general just do not struggle, generally speaking, in the K-12 system. It is many people's skewed perception that they're doing just fine. And I want to first frame that context so that when we do a Q&A later, everything is better framed so everyone understands where we're at. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and quickly describe myself professionally. I'm in the training and education space. I have a YouTube channel and I have a LinkedIn page as well. For those of you who want to connect with me, feel free to do so. You don't have to, but I just kind of want to give you an idea. If you want to look me up, understand who is talking in this talk, you can definitely easily look me up that way. Okay. And so this talk is about AAPI youths really struggle in the K-12 arena. And I want to inform you of the situation. I want to explain the impact of the said situation, especially on their identity and on their self-esteem. And then finally, oh, my computer is lagging a little bit. Actually, give me a second. Sorry about that. And finally, I want to talk about the actions we can take to build bridges. And it's more than just cross-cultural bridges, but also cross-generational bridges. So a lot of times, like I said, people don't understand if their API students are struggling in school at all. But the truth is that a lot of them are really just smiling through the pain. They are suffering. And I can give you very concrete stories. So this is going to be a very storytelling style talk. And the 2 big topics I want to cover is the situation and how it impacts identity and self-esteem, and cross-cultural bridges. I'm going to start with the situation first. So I want to first tell you a story. In a charter school I once worked in, one time the teachers walk out of the meeting with the principal and the school leaders feeling very upset. And this is what the teachers say to each other. They say, so are they asking us to fudge the numbers? Are they asking us to sabotage or hurt Asian American students to bridge the achievement gap? And this is so unfair. I don't feel like this is what I signed up for when I wanted to be a teacher. Now, these are multiple teachers who walked out of the meeting upset. A few of them actually have the brass to push back at the school leaders, at the expense of potentially hurting their jobs. That's how upset the teachers were. And what happened was the school attempted to apply double standards to kind of lower the academic achievements of Asian students. So on the surface, it looks like the school is shortening the achievement gap. The achievement gap, the idea of that is how oftentimes the school would track the different demographic of students. And if there's a big difference between academic achievements, the school will attempt to try to shorten that and sometimes by any means necessary. Sometimes with better ways, but sometimes in very bad ways. And this is a bad example of one of the schools I worked in, and they try to attempt to lower the Asian students' grades, so it looks like the achievement gap is more similar between the different students. And a lot of this is rooted in this idea of equity. Now, I want to briefly explain what equity is, but this is a cartoon that quickly explains it. If you're attending this conference, most likely you already have an idea what equity is about. Equity is about giving everyone what they need to succeed instead of giving everyone the exact same thing. So equality is making sure everyone has one box. The equity is you give 2 boxes to the child who needs more help to be able to see the ball game. So that's the idea of equity. And equity by itself is really not a bad idea at all. But the problem is when there's a wrong application of equity, that's when problems occurs. And a lot of Asian students are suffering under this type of wrong application. And it's best illustrated with this cartoon. So we have 3 Asian students in the school that's excelling, and they're doing well. Maybe they just work extra hours at school. Maybe they go the extra mile and study very hard. Maybe their parents push them very hard. We don't know how they excel, but 3 students, several students are excelling well, and Asian students are excelling well in the school. And then you have Bart, who is also an Asian student, and he's not doing so well at school. However, some schools actually might say, you AAPI kids are all the same. To us, you're just a statistic in that pool. So we're going to give Bart less support than Bart actually deserves. That is a wrong application of equity because it eliminates the individual human uniqueness. And all of us are human beings. We're not just a racial idea, we're humans. And Bart deserves more. And this is also seen in some notorious examples. So because of that, sometimes the school actually feel negatively, some school leaders, they feel negatively about Asian American students or AAPI students in general. So they feel that, they're kind of an inconvenient presence and it bugs them. So sometimes you have some school leaders who kind of respond to AAPI students in kind of negative ways. Here are some notorious examples. Okay, this one, if you're in California, you probably heard about this. The SF school board member, Allison Collins, used slurs to describe Asian American in tweets and frame Asian American successes as some kind of a racist situation and not attribute them to the sacrifices the AAPI students have made. Here's another recent case. The federal judges ruled new admission policies at elite schools discriminate against Asian students. Despite of that, we still have school board defying the court order to continue to discriminate against Asian students in their admission policies, applying double standards, unfair metrics, not allowing qualified candidates, the most qualified students to enter into the school, etc. And again, that is unjust precisely because of this story. It is not Bart's fault that there are other Asian students who are excelling. Bart is an individual and he deserves to be well supported just like as everyone else, even if he's an AAPI student. Now here's another school story too. This one is more personal to me. My own daughter, she's in K-6. And the teacher, she's an Asian girl, obviously, very small in stature. And the teacher actually will seat her next to the biggest bully in the class. I'll give you an example of what that bully does. A bully is a non-Asian student. The bully one time took her crayon and said, if you want to get your crayon back, then you talk to your parents to get money. And then you bring that ransom money to school, give me the money, then I'll give you your crayon back. So that's the type of things that child engages. Naturally, that child is very disruptive. However, the teacher would seat my child next to that child, be his sole table partner, throughout multiple seating arrangements where kids are supposed to have seats switched, but she remains next to him and continue being harassed by him. And that's really what a lot of times the school actually does. They use Asian students as a buffer to kind of see them around the students, the bullies that are harassing everyone, because their perception is Asian students usually don't speak up very much. So they're the perfect toolbox for us to put a hedge around the child that, no parents want their child to sit next to. So this happens actually more often than you think as well. So as parents, it's important to be aware of that. And then that kind of leads us to, why some students feel like they are disliked. I have had students who come to me say, Mr. Yang, in my teaching days, Mr. Yang, does, principal blah, 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 not like Asian students? Why is it that for the same school code infraction, the punishment of Asian students is a lot more severe than the other ethnicities? And these are the actual questions students ask, and they feel rejected by the people who are supposed to take care of them. So the teacher is not always right. And this is a photo of Confucius. I want to explain the context of Asian culture and Confucianism. AAPI in general usually put teachers on a pedestal and really honors educators, and that's a good thing. However, it's always good to be aware that educators, even the school leaders, are not always right. And the society is not above sending Asians negative toxic messages. Michelle Wu, the first woman of color mayor in Boston, she got elected. It should be a milestone in diversity and inclusion. However, there are some news channels kind of put some kind of twisted negative light on this, say, oh, because Michelle Wu is not the first, we didn't have a first Black female mayor in Boston. So, Michelle Wu's achievement, there's still kind of like a sad light to it. No, it's not. She's a woman of color. She's a person of color, just like every person of color. We don't have a caste system to deem who is more diverse, have more diversity value than others. So our kids see these kind of things as well. So we have the school giving them negative messages, and society is hitting them with negative messages. The message is you're not welcome here. Your success is not celebrated. Instead of recognizing your hard work, we'll put a negative label on it. And oftentimes that's how the kind of negative messages being sent to Asian American students. So what do? There are three aspects. I mean, there are multiple things, but I want to start by talking about the past. We want to first honor the past, the giants whose shoulders we stand on. And Martin Luther King is one of my personal heroes. He's amazing. And studying his philosophy for us to be willing to go back to these giants whose shoulder we can stand on will help us. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that's a perfect statement for every AAPI students to be aware of as they see themselves being unfairly treated by schools. The present, we want to speak up. And I spoke up for my child and made pretty big waves as well in my child's school. I pushed for equality. And so for us to speak up or even maybe contact organizations is going to help. For the future, build bridges. And that leads us to our next talk, cross-cultural bridges. So one time in one of my school assignments, I was at a school where the principal told me, be careful, they hate Asians. They've never liked a single Asian teacher. Most of the students probably never even met an Asian in their entire life. The school consisted 100% of Latino American students, whom I love dearly, but many of them has never had Asian personal friends, and they never met an Asian teacher they liked or can relate to. And the school principal told me that, and obviously there's part of me that's feeling a little bit nervous. Not gonna lie, I was a little bit scared, but I went on anyway. And how I build bridges is by first honoring the culture of my students. And I pull out one of my personal heroes as well, Cesar Chavez, who talked a lot about just being kind and just caring about diversity. And then when I was teaching the students, I often connect to a lot of what I teach to the viral bloggers, that kind of cultural bloggers that explore different cultures, like this guy. His name is Food Ranger. He explores a lot of different foods in China. And the students kind of see these kind of little connections. They go like, AAPI culture is not as mysterious and alien as I thought. These are all very relatable. It seems very fun. I would love to be able to do that. One time a student did that to me when I had my back turned. And I turned around and told the students, I say, and the other students, because they love me, they tell me about it. because I became like the top 3 favorite teachers in that school very soon, because I really tried to do my best to build connections. And uh, the other students just tell me, Mr. Yang, so and so did this to you, just did this when you had your back turned. And I had to talk with the student. I said, I'm totally not mad at you at all. I mean, it's against school policy. If I see it, I have to address it. But since I didn't see it, I'm not going to address it. I didn't see it with my own eyes. But I want you to know that our society, according to statistics, more than 20% of the Americans admit to having negative racial prejudice. And so you're not uncommon. And you can, as you're growing up, you want to decide, am I going to be part of that 20%? Am I going to be part of the people who actually care about diversity and racial equality? And that's a choice you're going to make. But I'm not mad at you, and just come back, just keep learning. She never did that ever again to me, because she was so shocked how I wasn't reacting to her as a person. I was addressing racism as a philosophy. So a quick summary of how to build bridges: find common ground and honor and appreciate the other people's culture. Just like Cesar Chavez said, you don't have to downput other cultures to honor your own. You can honor everyone's, and treat racism as a philosophy. Racism itself, I don't want to attach a face to it. It doesn't have a white face, black face, Asian face, Latino face, none of it. It's not, there's no face to it because it's a philosophy. It's a human condition. It affects globally and throughout history. It's not unique to America. I know as Americans we like to think that we're the center of the world, but we're really not the only country on the planet Earth. Racism is a human condition that happens globally for thousands of years. And we stand together as one people to push back against it. So we need to see it as a monster. That's a philosophy. And that also brings us to an extra part of building connections. For me to have this talk at all, for me to push back at the school for unfairly treating my child, I'm actually building a connection. It's very important to build a connection. Even when you object to something, you're building a connection because you're revealing to people who you are. And as AAPI, we often are taught by various philosophies to not speak up. But unfortunately, by not speaking up, we deprive people of the opportunity to build connections with us. And we want to build connections, even when we disagree on ideas. And that's because that's the heart of connections. We got to reveal who we are to people and to be real. And that's one of the first steps to really help undo the marginalization of AAPI. So thank you for listening to this long-winded talk, and I'm opening myself up for questions.
Thank you so much, Randy, for this presentation. I really appreciate everything you just shared with us, some heartbreaking stories and statistics. And also I appreciate what you said about things we can do, and I just would love to mirror back some things I heard towards the end there. You said treat racism as a philosophy, which definitely is a shift for me to be part of the solution, to think in that way. I love that you mentioned honoring the culture of your students from your personal experience. You talked about the diversity value systems that are placed on kids, discrimination that's put in, I think you used the words, using children as the perfect toolbox, and how they then have to smile through all this pain. And I'd love to shine a light on, we had a comment from one of our listeners that said, that's from Dr. Angela Pearson, said, "I'm so happy you spoke up, Randy. I just wish I could hug your little girl and any child that is going through what you described. The willingness and ability to have a courageous conversation with the school staff is admirable. And hopefully that is resolved soon, that issue." And you said at the end there, or in your talk, you said, we're not a racial idea. We are a human being. We're human beings. And, in the last couple of minutes here, if you could share with us, and what some of the business leaders and should know about, you shared about what this experience is for a lot of AAPI youths. So what can business leaders do to set up these youths for success and what can the business leaders do in their outreach and their volunteering and their internship programs and their inclusivity? What is actionable things that, business leaders can do?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Hunter. And I have to first admit that I'm professionally, I'm really just a nerd behind my computer. I do a lot of HTML stuff. I play with educational technology and I set up like learning management systems and create e-learning modules and stuff like that. So I'm not exactly the Tony Robbins personality that really go around inspiring leaders. But based on what I have personally experienced, what I have personally seen, is that it's very important for business leaders to approach every individual, try to be self-aware of our own biases. So as we're interacting with an AAPI professional or interns, we want to understand them as a person, kind of understand their backgrounds without making assumptions, because those assumptions can have negative impacts. Even the tiger mom, tiger dad assumptions, while seemingly innocent, can have very negative connotations. And
Can I jump in right there, Randy? Can you tell me
Yes.
what a tiger mom and a tiger dad is for folks that may have not heard that language before?
Oh, thank you, Hunter. The tiger mom, tiger dad is an Asian stereotype that Asian students excel because their parents push them like sweatshop owners so hard. They enslave and on back with back-breaking push to cause them to excel, and that's how Asian students excel. Oftentimes, that is not the case at all, and to do that, it puts a stigma on the success of Asians because it's not uncommon. I'll take Olympic athletes, for example. A non-Asian Olympic athlete who excels with highly supportive parents, oftentimes the media will frame them as parents who believe in their kids' dreams and being very supportive. But if it's an Asian, oftentimes they will say, oh, because that person probably have a tiger mom or tiger dad who pushed them so hard, often against their will and through blood, sweat, and tears, and not caring about how their kids feel and to just push them to excellence. But that's, instead of being an inspiring connotation, it turned into some sort of a almost abusive, low-key abusive connotation, and it's not inspiring at all. And I feel that there's a lot of very subtle things that's really that negatively frames the AAPI experience and actually creates this mysterious shroud over AAPI individuals, kind of reducing them down to almost a caricature. And I think as leaders, it's good to be aware of these type of biases that the world is, so that we can make the most objective decisions in our judgments.
Yeah. And speaking of which, we're talking about the youths and so what the leaders can do to support them potentially when they're coming into a career position, as you were describing. Well, what kind of support do AAPI youths need right now in the context of all the anti-Asian and AAPI violence we've seen and crimes against and discrimination that has increased during the pandemic? It's just been astronomical. What kind of support can we provide? Can schools provide? Can parents provide to these youths that are suffering, that maybe are, as you said, suffering in silence and smiling through the pain?
Yeah, thank you, Hunter. And that's an enormous topic and cannot be answered by one single answer, but I can share my personal feelings on it and my thoughts on it. I feel that the first step to recovery is admitting that we have a problem. And that's really actually where we as a society fail the most in regards to Asian American students. And this is not just Randy Yang's opinion. This was one of UCLA's teacher education program. They have a course dedicated to this, that AAPI students are among the most marginalized student demographics because, and it's not because they're necessarily so injured or they have the most horrible things done to them per se, but rather they are the most ignored. We don't admit that we have a problem. I think first step is admitting that we have a problem. The fact that the school defied the federal court ruling to continue to discriminate against Asian American AAPI students is because they don't admit we have a problem. But we have a problem. I think for us to be willing to we don't have to put emotion into it, but really just objectively and fairly and very open-heartedly say, yes, we have a problem, guys. Let's face this problem. Stop pretending it doesn't exist. And I think that's probably the best first step.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, being able to if we can't accept the problem, then there is no problem, right? So
Absolutely.
in order to move through it.
Absolutely, Hunter. And the same thing with a lot of Asian anti-AAPI hate crimes is, there are a lot of people who are just ruling, some investigators just saying, oh, it's just mental illness. It's not racism. It's a homeless problem. It's not racism. But actually, no, it's racism. If the person is targeting AAPI, is shouting slurs, it's racism. And it's not mental. Yes, they may have mental illness, but it's also a racism problem. Yes, we have a homeless problem, but it's also a racism problem. To be willing to admit we have a problem is extremely important, and not just for the K-12 arena, but also for society as a whole.
When you said that racism as a philosophy, to treat it as a philosophy, would you say that this is part of it here, where it's easy for people to deflect the problem onto other things? And if we're zooming out and looking at it as a philosophy, how do we put those pieces back together to make an actionable change? Absolutely.
Yes. This is where, if it's a philosophy, then it has no face to it. And a lot of people, they make, I love America. I love American culture. I love the way that, we care so much about many issues. But definitely one of the things that the American society, that we have failed as a society, that we have failed to put ourselves in the shoes of other countries and other people. We think we're everything. We think we're the only country on the planet, and we project all of our views. Give you an example. The Miao people in China, they have this special kind of makeup they reserve only for ceremonial celebrations and weddings. They paint their entire face black. They've been doing that for thousands of years. And by doing so, they feel that that is the color of prosperity. And the marriage is going to last, and they're going to have a lot of money. And the Miao tribe have been doing this for thousands of years. Now, America, unfortunately, we have a very shameful part of our past, which is doing blackface. Some people who have, there's some white supremacists that paint their face black and to kind of try to mock the African Americans, which is extremely wrong. However, when people start looking at Miao tribe practice today, there's some people who are going after them, saying that they're doing blackface and that's racist. That's a classic example of America kind of thinking that our views is the only view on the planet Earth. Miao tribe been doing for thousands of years. My grandpa was part Miao, and so this is very personal to me as well. Just because someone at one point in history does one thing, you cannot go back thousands of years to completely demonize the entire thousands of years of heritage of an Asian tribe. And that's another example. Racism is faceless. It's faceless because it's a human condition. It's everyone. I'm liable to fall into if I'm not careful. You're liable as well. Everyone is liable. If we're human beings, we need to be able to recognize that as a human condition universally. So we don't try to create this terrible caste system. So who is more discriminated against? Who is less discriminated against? Who is the real bad guys? Let's all hate on that one group. Yeah, that's not good. We got to treat it as an idea so all the people groups can unite together to tackle it.
Wow. Yes. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Randy, for your insight and your sharing your personal, your courageous vulnerability today, as well as your insight on this topic. Is there a way that's very personal to you? Can you let us know? You already have it there, actually, how people can connect to you, which is great. So please do check out Randy's LinkedIn and his YouTube page there. And I think we're going to drop that in the chat. So thank you so much, Randy. And I'm going to pass it over back to Mariella.